You are feeding your subconscious mind right now. Every idle thought, every half-believed worry, every assumption you repeat under your breath, it all goes in, and the machine underneath your awareness builds from whatever you give it, without questioning a single ingredient. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly how your inner dialogue becomes the architecture of your lived experience. And more critically, you'll know how to change what you're feeding it. Neville Goddard coined the term mental diet in the late 1930s. The phrase sounds quaint, almost cute, but the mechanism behind it is anything but soft. Goddard argued that your habitual inner speech, the running monologue you barely notice, functions as a set of instructions. Your subconscious mind receives those instructions the way a builder receives blueprints. It builds exactly what the plans describe. No editorializing, no quality control. If the blueprint says I'm always behind, the structure that gets built is a life where you're always catching up. Think about what you said to yourself this morning. Before your feet hit the floor, that half-conscious narration, another day of this, or I hope this works out, or I can't afford that. Those sentences feel throwaway, background noise. They land in your subconscious like concrete poured into a foundation mold. The distinction that makes this uncomfortable is the word accept. You don't have to shout affirmations at a mirror. You don't have to feel ecstatic about a belief. You just have to accept it as true. Quietly. Almost passively. The thought, I'll probably get passed over again, doesn't need emotion behind it to do its work. It just needs your consent, that resigned inner nod. That's enough. Goddard described this as the first-person present tense principle. The subconscious responds to statements framed as current reality. I am is the most creative phrase in your inner vocabulary. Whatever follows those two words, spoken internally with even mild acceptance, becomes a directive. I am tired of struggling. I am always late. I am bad with money. Each one files itself away as a building specification. So why does this matter beyond positive thinking platitudes? Because the subconscious doesn't build in a straight line. It builds through pattern recognition. It scans your environment for evidence that matches the blueprint, and it filters out anything that contradicts it. A psychologist would call this confirmation bias. Goddard would call it the law of assumption made visible. The label changes. The mechanism stays identical. You've experienced this. You decide you're unlucky, and suddenly you notice every red light, every delayed email, every minor inconvenience, while the green lights and smooth moments dissolve from memory like they never happened. Your subconscious curated your perception to match the blueprint you handed it. Efficient, ruthless, completely impersonal. Here's where the discipline enters. Changing your mental diet sounds simple. Just think better thoughts. Anyone who's tried it for more than 48 hours knows the truth. Your habitual inner speech fights back. Hard? You'll catch yourself mid-sentence internally, correct the thought, and then 5 minutes later find the old narration running again like a song stuck on repeat. The old blueprint has momentum. Years of momentum, in most cases. Goddard was honest about this. He compared it to fasting. The first days are the hardest. Your mind craves the familiar thought patterns the way your body craves sugar. I'm being realistic, it whispers. I'm just being honest with myself. That voice sounds like wisdom. It's actually the old blueprint defending its territory. The practice works like this. You catch an unwanted inner statement. This always happens to me. You pause, you revise it, you replace it with the version that reflects what you'd accept as true if your desired reality were already here. Things work out for me consistently. And then, this is the part most people skip. You return your attention to the revised version every single time the old one resurfaces. Every time. For days, sometimes weeks. That repetition is the actual work. One revised thought, stated once, does almost nothing. A revised thought reaffirmed 50 times a day for 3 weeks starts rewriting the blueprint at a structural level. Your subconscious begins scanning for evidence of the new instruction. Opportunities you would have missed start registering. Conversations shift in tone because your posture and word choice shift first, below conscious awareness. A skeptic would push back here, rightfully. You're saying thoughts alone change material circumstances. The honest answer is more precise than that. Thoughts change perception changes behavior. Changed behavior changes the responses you receive from every person and system you interact with. The chain is long enough that it looks like magic from the outside. From inside the mechanism, every link is observable. Consider someone who carries the internal narrative, "People don't respect me." That belief shapes their eye contact, their vocal tone, their willingness to speak up in meetings, their tolerance for boundary violations. Other people respond to those behavioral signals, and the response confirms the original belief. The blueprint reinforced itself through a feedback loop so seamless the person never sees the machinery. Change the internal narrative to "I carry myself with quiet authority," and the behavioral signals shift. The eye contact steadies, the voice drops half a register, the boundaries firm up. Other people respond to the new signals. The new blueprint starts producing new evidence. The feedback loop works in both directions. That's the part worth sitting with. Rumi wrote something that maps onto this with eerie precision. What you seek is seeking you. Read that through the lens of mental diet and it stops being poetry. It becomes operational. The subconscious mind, programmed with a clear internal narrative, begins organizing your attention, your impulses, your micro-decisions, all below the threshold of awareness, toward experiences that match the accepted belief. You're seeking it consciously. Your subconscious is seeking it through 1,000 tiny adjustments you'll never notice making. The hardest part of maintaining a mental diet is the gap between revision and evidence. You change the inner speech. Days pass, nothing visible shifts. The old narration seizes on that silence. See? Nothing's happening. This doesn't work. That moment, that exact moment of doubt, is the test. Goddard called it the bridge of incidents. The rearrangement is happening in sequences you can't yet see. Your job during the gap is maintenance. Keep the revised blueprint intact. Guard the inner speech like you'd guard a wound that's healing. Every time you pick at it with doubt, you reset the clock. There's a physical dimension to this that's worth naming. Your body responds to your inner speech in real time. The tight shoulders you carry aren't random tension. They're the physical residue of chronic internal narratives about pressure and inadequacy. That heaviness in your chest before a Monday morning, it isn't about Monday. It's about the story you've been telling yourself about what Monday means. Change the story, genuinely, at the level of accepted belief, and the body follows. Slowly, but it follows. The mental diet also reveals something uncomfortable about responsibility. If your habitual inner speech shapes your experience, then the shape of your current life carries your fingerprints. Every repeated worry was a brick. Every accepted limitation was a wall. That realization stings. It's supposed to, because the same mechanism that built the current structure can build a different one. The architect was always you. The blueprints were always revisable. Practical application looks mundane. It should. You wake up. You notice the first automatic thought. You evaluate whether it reflects the reality you're building or the one you're leaving. You revise as needed. You do this dozens of times throughout the day, while brushing your teeth, while commuting, while waiting for a response to an email that makes you anxious. Especially then. The moments of emotional charge are when the subconscious is most receptive. What you tell yourself during anxiety, frustration, or fear carries triple the weight of what you tell yourself during calm. So the mental diet asks the most from you at precisely the moments when you have the least to give. When the rejection email arrives, when the conversation goes sideways, when the bank balance drops. Those are the moments that matter most, because those are the moments your subconscious is listening hardest, waiting for the instruction that will determine the next layer of construction. Goddard said something that cuts through every complication. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The feeling, the internal climate of someone who already has what you're building toward. That climate generates specific inner speech, specific assumptions, specific automatic thoughts. Your job is to identify what that person's mental diet looks like and adopt it now. Before the evidence arrives, that's the discipline. That's the entire practice. Your subconscious is receiving blueprints from you right now. In the silence between these sentences, your inner monologue is already running. The question was never whether the mechanism works. It's been working your entire life, building faithfully from whatever you handed it. The question is whether you'll keep submitting the same plans, or sit down tonight, quietly, and start drafting new ones.